and I would say this, I say this all the time. I'm like, I know that if I fall, he'll catch me.
Mm,
I knew that. And so when I look for
absolutely.
a husband, I also look for the same thing. I look for those similar qualities because
Mm,
I want a husband that if my daughter falls, if our kids were to fall, he's going to be there. He's not going to be right there, like whoo, underneath. Like you
right.
want
Give
to
them some
learn,
room to grow and learn.
grow, right?
Right.
They know that there's still that foundation there, and that's so major.
Mm, mm.
You
Well,
know.
and I love that you're bringing up now some of the other fathers in our lives,
Mhm.
right? Hey, I'm Teen Zekas.
And hey, I'm Ileka Follette. We are business owners and moms with corporate backgrounds, and we are all about getting Black women paid in both corporate and business.
And you're listening to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast.
Let's go.
Hey, welcome back to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast. We have a special episode today with Father's Day coming up. We wanted to honor our own fathers and the fathers in our lives who helped us become the businesswomen that we are today. So, welcome to a special Father's Day episode of Getting Black Women Paid podcast. Again, I am Teen Zekas, and I'm here with my lovely co-host.
And I'm Ileka Follette. Hello, everyone. I'm super excited about this episode.
Me too. Me too. I am. Okay, so I want to start with, I mean, we're honoring Black fathers in this
Yes.
episode. We want
Mhm.
to talk about the strength that we get from
Mhm.
wonderful Black fathers, and the ways that they can influence and shape the way that Black women get paid, the way
Mhm.
that we pursue generational wealth, all of those things that we are so focused on. Black fathers can be a huge part of that. So I'm just so excited to be talking about this.
Yes. And it's like a love note to our dads, you know?
Oh yeah,
So if we
absolutely.
cry, right?
We're just preempting it right now. There might be tears.
Exactly.
So I would love to kick it off and just give a little intro about my father. So, as I think I've mentioned previously on the podcast, I am the daughter of a Nigerian immigrant father. Um, he is royalty, legit Nigerian royalty, and he just he is the embodiment of service to community, service above self. And I have spent my whole life watching him um, give of himself. He is a business owner, and that is not actually the piece that I took inspiration from. Growing up, I didn't really see him like doing the business, whatever. What I saw was, because he was his home boss, he could coach our soccer teams.
Mhm.
He could, be there. There was a time where he was working from home, and so he was there when I would get home from school.
Wow.
And so that's what I saw. So I wasn't, looking to him being like, I want to be in business. I want to have my own business. I was looking to him just like, this is how you show up for your family.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
So that's my little intro of kind of growing up with growing up with my dad. What about you?
So my dad, Black American man from the South, grew up extremely poor, right? And and he decided, I remember he's told me stories about when he was 4 years old, how he decided that he would not live that lifestyle, that he was going to work to make something of himself.
Wow.
And as he did that, he was a factory worker. He actually worked in a factory, but he would listen. He would have conversations with people and learn about money. And he would read, like
Mm,
read newspaper front and back. He always joked that, he wasn't the greatest kid at school. He wasn't the greatest at school, right? But I'm like, and you would sit there reading like the entire financial section of the newspaper every day, you know, like,
Right.
so he learned money so well. So he would get into some stocks or invest well in different things so that he knew how to grow his money basically. And then he would teach it to us, not necessarily in ways where he's like, here's what you do, but we would watch things. So there were four of us girls, all girls, right? And one thing that I noticed my parents doing is, um, like we lived on like my mom's salary. She worked she worked for an airline, and so back then maybe I don't know 30 something thousand dollars a year, if that, right?
Yeah.
And so we're a family of six living on that. Guess what they were doing with my dad's salary? They were saving it. They were saving it and investing it and
Wow.
growing wealth, and we saw that. And so it's something that really stuck with us on how to manage wealth. And so that was super important. But the other thing, I loved how you mentioned how your dad was there. My dad was the epitome of that too. So I noticed he worked in a factory, and I actually talked to my husband about this the other day. My dad worked in a factory, and when he started, so he worked in one, and then it closed down, so he had to find another position,
Right.
right, in a new factory. And so when he started the other factory, you could work like first shift, second shift, or third shift. And he initially was working second shift because you don't get your pick when you're starting
Right.
out.
Yeah.
So he's working second shift and he's just, working at the factory. Well, I had basketball games. And so my basketball games were every Tuesday and Friday from at 7 p.m. or whatever, right?
Hmm.
So my dad changed to third shift so that he could make it to my basketball
Oh,
games. And then he would leave my basketball games. I'd have to ride home with him so he could talk to me about what I did right and wrong in this
yep.
game. Right?
Recap the whole game. Yep.
I could hear every play by play of what I did and what my team did, my
Yep.
coach did.
Yep.
And then he would, drop me off at home, and then he would go to work.
Amazing.
And then he'd come home. And when he got home from work, I would just be waking up in the morning and we would sit down, we'd have coffee, and then I would drive to school. He was teaching me how to drive. So I'd drive to
Oh.
school,
So he
learning.
was coaching you on basketball. He was coaching you on driving.
Exactly. My dad he's the ultimate motivational speaker. He should have
Mm,
been a motivational speaker or a coach or something like that. He was my first coach. And when I look around my family members, like my cousins, especially my male cousins who may not have had dads in their lives, and
mm.
some who did, they all came to my dad for advice, and they still do at 30, 40, and 50 years old.
Oh, I
These
love
men still call my
that.
dad when they have
I
a big
love that.
yeah.
Oh, that is amazing. Well, and I love that you brought up, I'm going kind of back towards the beginning, just
Mhm.
the education piece to imagine where he came from and now look at where his child is in terms of, I'm going
Mhm.
to change my circumstance and
Yeah.
I'm going to set something up for the next generation so they can do better than I did.
Mhm.
That reminds me of my dad as well. So, his grandparents were illiterate,
Mhm. Wow. Yeah.
his parents were educators, and
Mm.
then he and all of his siblings have professional degrees
Mhm.
beyond, postgraduate.
Yep.
So, each generation, it was, you're going to do more.
Mhm.
And I remember I was in second grade and I got a C on a spelling test. And my dad sat me down and he said, everyone in this family goes to college. And I was, 7. I thought that colleges were going to be looking at my second grade spelling test. So,
It was a C.
well,
Right.
I learned how to spell, but I I mentioned that because it was very clear early on in my life what the expectation was going to be,
Mhm.
and, that he was gonna do the work to provide for me to have that opportunity, but that I
Mm.
was gonna do the work to get there, right?
Yes.
And I noticed, even in my own parenting, I was talking with, I think it was my tax advisor or something about our, like, education funds for the kids, and she said something about, like, "Well, and if they decide not to go to college," and, like, my first thought was like, "Oh, they're going to college," and I was like,
Mm.
oh, I didn't even know that lived in me." I'm over here thinking I'm this
That's
progressive
bad.
parent, you could do whatever you wanna do, and now I'm like, "Ooh, some of that
Right.
some of that lingered."
That's hilarious.
Um But even so, when I was making different pivots in my career, when I was quitting things without a plan,
Mhm.
he was there.
Yeah.
You know, he helped me set up my classroom
Oh,
when I was gonna be a math teacher. He helped me, hang up the posters and do whatever. And I worked at that school for like a month over the summer, getting everything ready. And we've talked about this too. I quit that job 6 school days in.
yeah.
And you know who picked me up and helped me take down all that stuff? Was my dad.
Oh my goodness.
And so to know that, you know, I was leaving a career that he had supported, right? I was gonna be a teacher like his mother, and, that he didn't make me feel any kind of way when I
Mhm.
was like, "This is not for me. This doesn't fit." He was just there.
Yeah. And that's major.
Yeah.
It's and having that foundation, right? Like that's the thing that we get to talk about when we're talking about getting Black women paid and the things that we do, right? And the things
Mhm.
that we love and we're passionate about. That foundation that was set by our dads has been a game changer for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that when I think about I know that when I look at the things that I've done, whether it be working for the Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies, saving them millions, right? Doing all those things, leadership roles, and I look at my sisters doing the same things. I know that that came from that foundation that was set,
Right.
and the thing that you just mentioned that, and I would say this, I say this all the time. I'm like, I know that if I fall, he'll catch me.
Mm,
I knew that. And so when I look for
absolutely.
a husband, I also look for the same thing. I look for those similar qualities because
Mm,
I want a husband that if my daughter falls, if our kids were to fall, he's gonna be there. He's not gonna be right there, like, whoo, underneath. Like, you
right,
want
give
me to
them some
learn?
room to grow and learn.
Grow, right?
Right.
They know that there's still that foundation there, and that's so major,
Mm, mm.
you
Well,
know?
and I love that you're bringing up now some of the other fathers in our lives,
Mhm.
right? Um, I know this is a tribute to Black fathers. My husband is not Black, but he the support that he gives me in founding this business, in doing this work that is not guaranteed. It's not a guaranteed paycheck, and taking care of the kids when I'm going on a trip to speak somewhere and what have you. I mean, it is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's unconditional. The support is
Yeah.
unconditional, the support for me, and as you said, I know that he'll have that same support for our kids. And the more that, we as Black women can realize that we deserve that and have
Mhm.
that as a prerequisite for
Right.
whatever partner we're gonna invite into our lives.
I almost did.
The snaps.
The snaps. I almost did the snaps. I
Yes.
mean, yes, exactly. And, I love that you mentioned that because exactly that, right? I often talk about how I have 4 kids, right? We have 4 kids.
Mhm.
And people are like, "Oh my gosh, you have 4 kids," like I'm a Duggar. Remember the Duggars who had like 20 kids? That's how people look at me. You know? And it's like, "You have 4 kids?" Like it's crazy. But also at the same time, they're looking at me like, "Oh, you have 4 kids. You are superwoman. You are handling it all. You have 4
Mhm.
kids. You have a business, and you're doing this." And I'm
Right,
like,
how do you do it all?
"How do you do it all?" And I also have support. Like,
Mm,
if you saw me traveling on these trips to be an MC at this event or speak at this event or go on or host this retreat or whatever it is, I can't do those things without my amazing husband who's there taking care
right.
of 4 whole people who all have personalities and all have a ton
Mhm.
of crap that they've gotta do, right? "Oh,
Yep.
mom, I've got soccer and I've got track and I've got this field trip and this
I
homework,"
love your kid's voice.
right? They have all the things, right?
You have all the things, yep,
It's
and
like
without that support,
mhm.
there's no way you could, quote, unquote, "do it all," right?
Right, exactly. Mhm,
And for me, even I almost sometimes I feel bad even talking about, the work-life balance conversations and how do you do this, how do you do that, because my husband takes care of the kids, he takes care of the house, he does the
mhm,
cooking. He is the stay-at-home dad,
mhm, mhm,
and when I did, at one point in my career have a pay cut, then he continued to do all those things and then worked nights and weekends to pick up the slack. He is the reason I can do this.
Exactly. Yep. It's just that simple, right?
Yeah.
Having that support is huge. And my husband's not a stay-at-home dad, so he's also doing the working and supporting me, right? In this dream that I have to grow this business, right? And just thinking about that, we have these dreams that are amazing. We want to do all these things, but I often think about people who don't have that level of support, and I'm like, man,
Right.
would I be able to do it without the support of being able to help with the kids, of and of course I support back when he has things that he needs to do, things are a little heavier
Right.
at work. We have
It's a partnership.
A partnership and a balance. And at the same time, there are times when I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be gone for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. There are 4 whole people here that are like, I still need all these things.
I need to get to every place. I need multiple meals every day.
Right, exactly. Grocery shopping, all of these
Yeah.
things, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
like having that support is huge.
and I have talked to many women who do not have that faith in their spouse, right? That they'd be able to handle 2 weeks, right? Without, me doing the grocery planning, me doing the whatever. So to have that is huge. And I guess my message to listeners is, if you don't have this kind of support, and whether or not you're looking for a life partner, but having some support in your life where when you are digging into your business or when you're digging into your career stuff, the rest of your life doesn't fall apart because you're not also doing that. If you don't have that kind of support somewhere, maybe it's neighbors, maybe it's friends, that, this is a kind of a call to action to think about, what do I need? Who can I invite into my circle, into my life to really help me with this stuff?
Right. Maybe it's a brother, maybe it's an uncle, because again, those get to be father figures, or, for our kids or even ourselves sometimes, reaching out, to an uncle. I have a that I've talked to you pretty openly, and anyone who follows on Facebook knows pretty openly that I've lost some people. So recently I lost an uncle that was a really special uncle, and so his daughters literally came to my dad and was like, we're going to need you a lot more now.
Yeah.
These are this, and it's an honor, and I know my dad took that as an honor too, because these are important things, and to have, and that's why this is a love letter to our dads and our husbands, and and the Black men, the Black fathers in our lives, because they don't get honored as much as they should.
Oh yeah, Mother's Day, it's like you get the flowers, we did these crafts, we did all this stuff, and then Father's Day, it's like, here's a card with a joke about farting.
Right.
Oh man. Well,
Exactly.
and I'm so glad you brought up, the other Black men and the other Black fathers in our lives. My brother, he also has 4 children, and people do also look at him like, how? And he is another constant in my life where I know, there was a time where I had a mental health crisis, and my parents were out of the country. And my brother took me in. I stayed at his house. They cleared out one of the kids' beds and let me let me sleep there, but he was a person I could call at 3 a.m. and know, he's going to drop everything.
Yes.
And that is, that's something I want to instill in my kids. I'm watching them kind of grow up as siblings, and they've recently started doing sibling sleepovers. They like to sleep in each other's rooms on the weekends.
Yes,
Very sweet. And I'm hopeful that, they can be those pillars in each other's lives as well. And so it's a love letter to all of those supportive men who Oh, I am crying. I told you we warned you at the beginning.
We did tell you that this
That we might cry. I didn't realize it was going to be my brother who did it. He also he has his own podcast. He's incredible. Maybe I'll put a link to his podcast in the notes. It's called Love Language, and it's not about the like love languages, the typical thing you hear. Love is an acronym. It's learning, opportunity, values, and empathy, and it's about the language we use, and how we language in a way that promotes love. And he runs that podcast with his wife and with a colleague. And so whenever his comes out, I'm always listening, and I'm texting him during it because I'm like, oh, you said this thing, I want to do it. And then he'll text me when our podcast comes out, and he's like, hey, I never negotiated my salary, I didn't know I could do that, and just to have that that support is it's invaluable.
It really is. And I'm so glad we got to do this, because it's, I often feel that especially Black fathers don't get the praise.
Yes.
They're constantly being told that they aren't good enough. They aren't doing this. They aren't, and all we hear about is they aren't the ones that aren't there. Well, let's honor the ones that are, because there are so many that are. I was having a conversation with a woman recently. I know we're going to close out soon, but I had to bring this one thing up. I was having a conversation with a woman recently, and I realized that I have a life where growing up, I didn't know many, like in my family and stuff, many people or many bad fathers or many absent fathers.
Right.
My uncles were there for their kids. My dad was there for kids, so it's like, and then, so it was a norm. Both my parents had both their parents.
Right.
I mean, both my parents came, they were close to their dads. My mom's dad died early, but she was super close to him. He was an amazing dad. And then my husband, both his parents, and both his parents had both of their parents. So this is like what was normal for me. And the woman that I was speaking with, she had the complete opposite experience. Never known anyone who had a dad. She never, until her husband. And I was like, wow, like it's amazing and super interesting to look at how those experiences are so different. And so what I loved about this woman though, is she could have been one of these women who constantly said, dads aren't around, Black dads aren't there, black dads aren't there. But instead, she's the woman saying, oh yes, they are. Look at my husband.
Right. I'm going to go find it for myself.
Exactly.
And then that's going to be the change. That's going to be the change I see is, hey, I found something different. I love that. And so, yeah, if you're listening and if you didn't have a dad, supporting you growing up, know that these men are out there and find where to invite these influences into your life, whether it is an uncle or a mentor, a family friend, someone who can, be that example, provide guidance and that support.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you guys. That's our episode, and we're super excited. We love this episode, and it's a love letter to Black fathers. Be sure to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care.
Hey, thanks for watching the Getting Black Women Paid podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure you like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can catch more episodes like this one.
And join the conversation by leaving a comment below. Be sure to share this channel with incredible Black women in your life so we can continue getting Black women paid.
All right, we'll see you in the next one.